Alright, so I decided to film a little video here to describe the emotions, the anguish, everything that went along with my trip. I'm sure it will describe much better than pictures. So right now I'm sitting in my tent. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, my last day. And I just wanted to share with you guys what I went through for the last 5 days. So day one, Sunday, I got dropped off around 10:45 at the access point by Steph. She had sent, and Luke, they had sent me on my way, gave me a big hug, and sayonara as I walk off into the bush. That first day I had a 12-kilometer hike ahead of me to a place called Browns Lake. The first 8 kilometers of that hike were amazing. It was all railroad tracks for 8K, so it was so easy. I remember thinking to myself, if this is all it's got, then this is gonna be easy. I'm gonna have no problem. And then after the railroad tracks left, I was faced with a big ass hill. And you guys all know me, I don't step down from a challenge. And so I tackled this hill with some fucking meaning. I was like, I'm gonna show this hill who's fucking boss. I fucking ran up it with a massive pack on my back, and I was driving through my feet, and I was thinking to myself, get the fuck up there, own this fucking hill. And I did, and I got up there, and I was like, woo! And then I look over, and there was 50 other fucking hills the same fucking size as it. So needless to say, the next 4K were tough. And there was no landmarks on the map from where I was to my campsite, so I had no idea how far I'd gone, and it feels like you're going much further than you are, and it feels like you've been out there for much longer than you have been. And so by the time I got to my first campsite, I had collapsed. I remember screaming and yelling, just so happy, full of emotion. I was in so much pain, and it felt so good. The first campsite I was on was beautiful. It was picturesque, something you'd see in a magazine. It was on the point of a lake, a rock point, and there was a big tree coming out of the rock, and there was an actual outhouse there, big fire pit. So I was, if only they were all like that. and so I had a good time. I set up my tent, and I had some meals, and I climbed into my tent and went to sleep. Day 2, I had planned on hiking 16 kilometers. Little did I know that would be impossible. The route I chose was extremely scenic, tons of little rivers and lakes, and cool views and bridges and stuff like that. But the terrain was so difficult. I was going through swamps and up rock hills and down rock hills, zigzagging all over the place. It was, walking through passageways that are only as big as my body that can fit while going up a hill. It was tough. So I think I was 8K in, and I had already hiked 6 hours. I remember breaking down emotionally, physically, many times. My emotions were high. I was screaming, and I was yelling at myself, saying I had failed. Because there was no way I was going to get to my site by dark. I remember, the tears were streaming down my face, and I was losing my mind. And then there was like a sudden realization came to me where I was like, I am not even enjoying myself. What am I doing? As I was sitting in the dirt, relaxing, having a drink of water, I'm not even enjoying myself. So I then decided that I'm gonna stop off at a different campsite that was unexpected, make camp, and then the next day after that, have shorter hikes and enjoy my trip. So I got to that campsite that day at 4 o'clock, which is pretty late. The sun goes down by 6. So I had to set up camp and eat, and just as I did that, the sun was going down. So I crawled into, and this was like in the middle of the bush. It was pretty cool. Climbed into my tent and then called it a night. Did a little bit of light reading that night, but I was pretty exhausted. The next day I woke up. It was cool. I walked down to the water, and it was so calm. The most calm area and scene I've ever been in my entire life. I was filling up my water bottle, and I remember I heard a crow or something, and it didn't come by me for so long, and it must have been the echo. And so I decided to make my own echo, and I was screaming and saying cool things, and it was like in a movie. It was just a perfect echo. And so I relished that. Sorry, I enjoyed that moment, and packed up my shit and got out of there. That day I only had a 6K hike, so it was awesome. It took me 2 hours. The difference in terrain that day was unbelievable. It was, for the most part, flat and through bush. It was awesome. I got to my campsite at noon. Tons of time to do whatever I wanted to. I set up my tent and had a little bit of a snack, and then I explored. And I walked around and got to actually enjoy things, which was what I wanted in the first place. I sat down in the sun and read my book up against a log. It was great. It was really cool. And then I went to go hang my bag up on a tree branch for the night because of bears and my food. And it's actually surprisingly difficult for those who've never done it. And I got it up there, and it took me about 20 minutes, and it was a little frustrating. And then as soon as I did that and I was walking back to my campsite, I stepped in an old pile of bear shit. And I was like, holy fuck, this is real. You know, there was a bear here at some point. And so that was playing on my mind all night, and luckily I didn't see any bears. I did hear some yipping and yowling. I don't know if they're coyotes or wolves that night, but it didn't really bother me. And then I woke up Wednesday morning, early start. I was out the door all packed up and ready to rock by 9 o'clock in the morning. By 9:10, I had walked into a fucking torrential rainstorm. I was wearing my rain gear, and that didn't do shit. My backpack wasn't waterproof. My winter coat was hanging off my backpack. That was soaked. I was soaked to the fucking bone, man. And I had climbed up this big hill. And I remember it was the first hill, because I did a big loop, so it would have been the first hill that I climbed up like a fucking CrossFitter. And I was walking down it, and I heard this weird-ass noise. It was like a grunt. I stopped. And then I heard it again, and then I kept on going, and then I heard it again, so I stopped, grabbed my knife out, put it in my hand, grabbed the bear spray, put it in my hand, and decided to get the fuck out of there. No idea what it was. And then I got to this campsite I'm at now. I was completely soaked, so dropping off your bag and trying to set up tent when you're really wet is difficult. I have a tarp, which was cool. It was the first time I got to use it. It was hard to get it set up in the right spot, and then even when I did get it set up in the right spot, I had to set up my tent underneath it, which was pretty difficult. All the while trying to keep everything else a little bit more dry than it was. So I got into this tent at noon yesterday. I've almost been in here for 24 hours. It was so tough. So tough. I couldn't make any food because it was pouring down rain. It felt like the wind was going to fucking take this tent for a ride and take me with it. Every other night was very calm, and I'd clear and I could hear everything. Last night was extremely loud because of the wind and the rain, so I couldn't hear if there was a fucking bear beside my tent or whatever there was, you know. So I didn't sleep much, needless to say. But I made it through, and I made it through all 4 nights. And I honestly didn't even know what I was looking for in this trip. And to be honest, I'm not sure if I found it, but a little part of me thinks I did. I will say right now, this was the single most hardest thing I've ever done, mentally and physically, and I recommend it to anybody to get out there and just be on your own. It is incredible. The emotions you feel are up and down, and it's a roller coaster, and it's all worth it, man. I have an 8-kilometer hike out of here on those same railroad tracks I walked in, and I can't wait to be in a warm bed and a warm shower, but a little piece of me wants to stay out here. Unfortunately, I have to walk in my wet ass gear, but you know, c'est la vie. So that being said, I'm very happy that I made it through. See you guys.